Hey, Zern listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch.
What is wrong with you?
Well, not the white seasoned chicken. We went there. We went with the white piece of chicken. We can giggle now.
It wasn't that bad, I'll be honest. We had a lot of play, and I look really goofy and she looks really naggy, but it was much more in the middle than I experienced, to be.
Okay, so they showed a montage of Zay being, what Cole is saying, naggy. I would say being critical, talking down to him, belittling him a little bit. You know, you can certainly have a way of you like things to be. The cooking aspects, you can have your preferences. There's just a way of talking to people, let alone your partner, that's more respectful. And then the picking up of things, there's a tone that you can adopt that can be good or bad. It looked like there were some legit complaints. There was a coat just crumpled up in the middle of the foyer. So yeah, you can certainly request that they not do that. How do you do that, right? There's ways to do it. There's ways to not do it. Plus, you're just getting to know each other. Anyway, so Cole is defending her, saying like, well, I think they edited that. We had a playful... And I did wonder about that, because that comment where he's like, you're bipolar, I did speculate at the time. I'm like, is he just making a really dumb joke in this moment? What's going on here? So I still don't think even if he was joking, that's okay to say or ethical for him to say or even clinically sound for him to say, because it's ridiculous.
On Netflix.
Yeah, it's really bad. So, I mean, deservingly now, the suitcase part, we were moving into our apartment. I opened my suitcase and you were like, really, Cole? And I was like, I'm unpacking. That was the only one that I was like, that was wild. And I'm not organized. I got a lot to work on, so yeah.
Okay, so he did sneak in like, well, there was one moment, Zay, and then he used the word wild instead of insane or crazy, which is, he's learning already. That's good. That's another one of those words you can use.
Absolutely. I definitely could have shown more grace. We were in a super weird time warp and moving and, opening his suitcase and the first sock that goes on the floor. I definitely didn't have to jump on him about that. Yeah, I've just never shared my space. I've never been serious enough with anyone to have them over for more pack an overnight bag. And
Okay, so they're asking her, what do you think when you see that? And she's saying, yeah, I could have shown more grace. All right, that's good. And then she's saying, I've never lived with anyone before. Okay, but that doesn't mean the tone, right? And I hope they show that first day when they wake up where she's convinced that he's being a complete jerkface and she really is hostile with him and seemingly unfair. Hard to know. Again, I think she was triggered in the moment. Also, I hope they show the wedding. I mean, that was... I don't know how y'all took it, but I watched the scene and then went upstairs. My wife was watching the show as I was watching it down in my office. And we both agreed, yikes, there's a time and a place, right? You can certainly, if you have some things to say to Cole, say those things, but don't do it at the altar. I mean, yeesh.
And get out,
Yeah.
because I like my things in their place. So it was an adjustment.
I think so many things happened off camera. He's likable when you're watching it, and I just knowing what I know, it's I don't know, it's hard because I think Zay is such an incredible woman.
Interesting. So Alexa is saying behind the scenes and not included in the edit were a lot of issues with Cole. So she's claiming that Zay was given a bad edit, a deceptive edit. It could be. So if that's true, what I would say is that, yeah, it's possible that Cole had things that were cut out because they were trying to make him look good, but they left a lot of stuff in that made him look pretty bad. But when they just have behavior out in the open, it's hard to misinterpret it, or it's hard to see it as an editing issue. Anyway, and by the way, they talked a little bit about Andrew and his tears. I don't know if I reacted to that, but they reached out to Andrew to have him at the reunion, and he didn't come. And I actually took a little bit of time to Google if Andrew has spoken out about that whole thing, because it was a pretty big internet moment, which I suspected would happen when I saw it. But anyway, and he says that according to the contract, he can't really talk about why he did it, or he can't explain himself, which is dubious, but there was some speculation based on some evidence of things that he's retweeted or something that might indicate that he thought that he was in league with the producers. Like, okay, I'm supposed to be crying right now, so should I, he thought he was on the same page, like, okay, I'm going to fake crying right now, so this will be good television, right? Because that's what you want, right? So we're on the same, you're not going to show this, obviously, because this will be terrible to show. So I put eye drops in. And then he proceeds to talk again. And so he thinks he's doing them a favor. But anyway, so they're talking about the edit here, and we're going to hear from Cole now.
Got a girl's
Tangerines.
number at the bachelor party or something,
Yeah.
and they even talked about that. There was
Wait,
plenty of things. There was the
what?
body shaming that we saw
I got
on
a girl's
TV.
number at the bachelor party?
Cole, you told me that right before our wedding.
Wait,
We
no,
got
I
together.
didn't.
Yes, you did.
We
Yes, you
didn't
did.
even see girls. We were at a rodeo.
What is happening right now? A tangerine thing? What is that? And then, did I miss something? Was there a tangerine? And then Zay is claiming that he told her that he did get someone, he was hitting on someone. So if that's true, and Zay knew about that, so that's Zay's story. That's Zay's truth. That's her narrative. Is that, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just trying to piece, because, you know, my whole conspiracy thing of like, do they really wait until they get on the altar to make a choice? I mean, that's silly. No one does that. So her narrative is the night before the wedding at the bachelor party, he tells her, I got someone's number. Well, I guess that could fit, right? She could be like, well, I'm a no, but I'm not going to say anything until we're at the altar because it's just in a few hours anyway. So anyway, but he's denying it. Let's see what happens.
Guys.
Yeah. Thanks, baby.
I saw you before the wedding, and you told me. You said, I do have something to tell you. I tried to kiss a girl at the bachelorette party.
Oh my gosh. We didn't
And I
see
was
a
like,
single
Cole,
girl.
What did she say? And you were like, no, you said I'm engaged.
This is weird because I don't know what to believe on a complete different stories. So I'll tell you that as a therapist, couple therapist, family therapist as well, I will see stuff like this where not usually this elaborate though, but I will hear very different stories. And depending on which story I go with as a clinician, it kind of sets in motion, because if he did do that, then it's like, wait, what? Or if it was in that direction, you're like, okay, what's going on there? Or if she's making it up, lying, or is that distorted? Obviously that requires a different clinical direction. So sometimes I need to get some sort of guess as to what, sometimes I'll just address both, but this is pretty extreme. I've seen a lot of people come to me with different stories about an event, and he's basically saying, I didn't have an opportunity to do this. And plus, like, can we imagine that Cole would do that? That he just, well, I guess we could maybe if they had decided. So if I was to take a stab at it, I would say that something did happen. Maybe it wasn't that severe, but it was in that direction for Cole. And because my whole conspiracy theory is that Cole and Zay, early on, weeks before the wedding, had decided that they weren't going to get married. And then they somehow over time, or decided right then, as to who was going to say no to who and what their performance would be like at the wedding. Again, I have no evidence of that. This is just complete speculation. And then, because they had that agreement and because they were broken up, he met someone and is like ready to start dating again. And he's like, you can date too. We just can't get in trouble with production, right? He might have even got permission to date or something. Who knows? And then he goes to Zay and just like, so I just got to tell you, you know, we broke up weeks ago, but I just have to tell you, I met someone, I got her number. I just want to be honest with you. And Zay's like, oh, okay, well, we're broken up, so what's the big deal? And Zay is now using that against him, and he's like, oh my God, I can't believe there's no way for me to get out of this while still following the contract of the show. I don't know. There's just so many speculations that I'm making, but so that's one possible story that I'll throw out there. Then of course there's others, like, so I guess the other possibility is that she's completely distorted because there's distortions, right? Like when she was interpreting seemingly his just normal morning behavior as an absolute betrayal, rejection of her, right? That's a distortion. So she wasn't seeing something that didn't exist, right? She was interpreting what she was seeing in the worst possible way. But for her to say, you came to me and said you met someone and got her phone number, there's no way I can't imagine a situation she would misinterpret to be that. And to be, like if she said something like, well, you had some stories to tell, and what I gathered from it was that you met someone and you got her number. Like that would be more in line with a distortion. So I don't know what to think. Maybe we'll get some data.
We didn't
And I
see
was
a
like,
single
Cole,
girl.
what did she say? And you were like, no, you said I'm engaged to get married and I just want to kiss one more girl. And she was like, no, I don't. I think the phrasing was, I don't do cheating. And I said,
Literally
Cole,
never happened.
Cole, it's great. I'm a liar. I'm bipolar. Like your words.
Yeah, I mean, Zay's story is pretty elaborate and specific, but Cole is completely denying it and seems believable-ish. If I was to put my money down, I would say it's something in the direction of what Zay is saying, but I don't have any reason to believe that Cole would do something like that. Plus, there is the evidence that they were on camera and the bachelor party, and I thought it was kind of subversive of the show, and I think it was on purpose, that the women went on what would be considered more of a masculine stag party or bachelor party where they go to a strip club, whereas the men they didn't do that kind of stuff.
To me, do not do anything for or to me anymore. They don't. They did. Back then, they did.
Say, I'm not the one trying to hurt you right now. You're making up a story. There wasn't even girls at the saloon
No,
we were
you guys
at.
all hung out after the cameras were done. Y'all went out somewhere, and
No,
I don't
we
know the details,
didn't.
but y'all did.
Right, that's what I was wondering, because he keeps hammering on the saloon and the fact that there were no women at the places that they were at. And I'm like, well, at some point the cameras packed it in, so it's possible that you did something else. And yeah, so, and it sounds like Nancy knows that the men all did something afterwards, and he's not mentioning that, right? So, yeah.
I don't know, man. I was blasted, bro. I had like 20 shots and then like 20 beers. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and we
Where'd they
didn't
go?
go anywhere because of that. We got Ubered home, dude.
Y'all know y'all went
I know
somewhere.
that,
Y'all
I mean,
always
after, during the bachelor party, I mean, there were no girls anywhere on it. And then I jumped in an Uber after the bar.
Okay, so the other fellas are kind of backing up Cole's story. That doesn't mean Cole didn't do something without them. It's also possible Cole did nothing and never said anything along those lines, and Zay is lying. I guess the evidence in that column is that at the wedding ceremony, she made a decision to, I think, go completely off script and blast him on the altar. I don't think we've ever seen that before. I mean, that's not lying. She wasn't lying when she was blasting him on the altar, but she has it seems out of character for her, but it's clearly not because she did it. And she has a desire, or she feels righteous in blasting someone publicly, so that's kind of in the direction of like just making up a story to make someone look bad. But you'd think if she really wanted to make up a lie consciously, that she would make up a more definitive lie than that, right? Because that lie or that story is not great, but it's not as bad as what you would think she would come up with if she were if she really wanted to get him, like, you hit me one night, or I don't know, something. So, I don't know.
So I don't, that's news to me. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. I'm just saying
And I'm not saying
I have
anyone
no
else here
idea.
told me. So that's like not third-party information. That is direct from Cole's mouth, telling me that he tried to kiss a girl and got her number at his bachelor party.
Cole, do you really not remember this, or is she?
So then when Zay says that, I'm just reading into it. Possibility is that someone did tell her that wasn't Cole, and she doesn't want to out that person, so she just changes that detail. And Cole is like, what are you talking about? And now he's like, oh, someone must have told her. Or someone just made up a story and lied to her. I don't know. There's just a lot of possibilities.
Making this up.
I really don't.
Cole, please be
It's
honest,
not even that I
because
don't
you
remember it,
literally-
Vanessa. This is literally impossible. I don't know what to say, Zay.
The truth. You can start with that.
Why do you hate me, Nancy? What did
Because
I do?
Zenab is my girl, and everything that I know happens behind closed doors. Like,
That you
it's
don't
not
know
shown
that
on.
Now, I will say that individuals with a particular personality syndrome, with particular relational traumas, can distort reality to such a degree that they will believe completely delusional-ish things. I could go into the clinical language around this, but I don't really feel like it for various reasons because I don't want to cause any kind of internet drama. But we're all prone to this, and some people are prone to it to a large, very noticeable degree. Where, like I've told this story before, I had a client once who thought, she was positive, it was couple therapy, and she was positive that I said something, this was years and years ago. She was 110% sure that I had said directly to her in session that, I can't remember the exact phrase, but it was something like that she was a piece of crap or a piece of shit or something. It was something completely unheard of. Not only that I would say to anyone, particularly a client, but that I would even think it. I would never even think a thought like that about a client. And the husband was like, he never said that. I was in the same room. He never even said. But when you go through certain relational traumas and you experience a lot of that kind of abuse, there are certain neurological, personality-related issues and distortions that can lead one to be convinced of something happening, not because it's actually delusional like schizophrenia or psychosis, but emotionally it felt that way, and so the individual will match up some details to justify the way that they feel. They feel betrayed times 100, and they're like, why do I feel so betrayed? And then their brain sort of gives them a story to justify why they feel that betrayed, why they feel that harmed. And then over time, they tell themselves that that's what happened, and it becomes a truth. It becomes reality to them, not only in the details of the memory that is fabricated, but also the emotional vibe. They remember feeling, they're still hurting from it. They can't be hurt by something that didn't happen. It's very complicated. I could talk for a long time about it, but there is that. There's no evidence that Zay is suffering from that. I just want to say, but I'll just throw that out there.
Right, and that is your saving grace, Cole, is that they did not use it. Because so much of that stuff, the pushing food away from me, asking me if I'm gonna eat that, trying to get me to order a salad, the daily comments about my face and my body were not used.
So we'll probably never know what happened. So I'll just talk about, like with the trial, I'm like, well, we have completely different stories here. We'll probably never know what really happened, and that's okay. We can be okay with not knowing. Okay, we can hear two different stories, and even if you don't like one of them, if you like one of them over the other one, that doesn't mean the one that you like is not lying. Okay, you can like someone, particularly liking someone on a TV show, having a parasocial relationship with someone doesn't mean you actually know them. So we can all just, maybe that's what we can learn from this is take a deep breath. If you feel very firm that now maybe there'll be data that will slam dunk this whole situation for us one direction or another, but I'm guessing we're not going to get that unless we get some corroborating evidence, which I'm guessing we're not going to get. But anyway, if we don't get that, then we can learn from this. We can learn to sit with the uncertainty and to sit with I don't know. I'll never know. Could be that, could be a third story. That's an important place to be. It's an important, logical, science-based place to be, evidence-based place to be. We don't have evidence. We weren't there. We have two different stories. People lie, people distort. So they could all be acting. They could have decided they were going to have this fight before they even went on the thing. We just don't know. We can't tell. You can make guesses. I've been making guesses, but we just don't know. Having said that, what we can say is that if he was saying those things to her about food and about body, which we could imagine, we didn't see any evidence of that, I don't remember, but he did have a thing about her body, right? He didn't like her body in a certain way. I think he didn't say that directly, but I think that was essentially what he was getting at. And so it's a stretch to go from there to direct body shaming and saying, are you going to eat that? And you're disgusting, giving that kind of vibe. But if he did do that, that is deplorable. You know how I feel about we've seen other people do that kind of behavior on these various shows. And yeah, I have a pretty hard line on that. That is just awful. It's common, but awful. So if you did that, that's awful.
About you, because I still cared so much. I did.
Just doesn't make sense. Everyone, if I was that horrible to you, it just doesn't make sense. That's why I asked you the bipolar thing, is because it's how confusing is that? That if I was this horrible the whole way through, but
Yeah. So as they both talk, I'm like, oh, I'm swaying kind of back and forth. I'm not committing. Of course, I can't know, right? We can't know. But I don't know. I could see it going either way. I could see his perspective, and there are some things in that realm that she did and that he was indicating that point in a direction of him being like, I don't understand you, and the way that you treat me, sometimes it's like I'm this devil person, and then other times you are in love with me. What's happening? People will say that's bipolar. I said this before. It's not an indication of bipolar. You could say it's potentially an indication of a cluster B personality disorder. There's no data, and there's not enough data to even go in that direction. But bipolar is not that. I mean, can someone with bipolar do that? Sure, but not everyone with bipolar is the same. There's people who are under treatment for bipolar, but there's this idea that somehow bipolar is like that. And I've said this before, that there are some clinicians that don't understand bipolar. I've seen it. I've seen people look at people like Zay and go like, they have bipolar. I'm like, what? Have you never treated someone with bipolar? Which is possible. Not every clinician. There are disorders in the DSM that I've never treated, that I've never come across. The DSM is large. Look at all these pages. And each disorder is probably like 2 pages, 3 pages. And this thing is over 1,000 pages. So, do the math on that. And there's just a lot of different things. Now, the biggies I've experienced, every personality disorder, all the mood disorders, including bipolar, OCD, all the anxiety disorders, a lot of the childhood disorders, a lot of the paraphilias, dissociative disorders. I mean, as I sort of rattle them off, it's like, which chapter have I not? Let me look, actually. All right, yeah. So childhood disorders, a lot of them, but not all of them, and some of them weren't very central. I've had some tic disorders that were present but weren't that important given the overall clinical picture. I will say schizophrenia. I can't recall having ever. It's not my specialty, and it's a pretty specific area, and you can't psychotherapize people out of schizophrenia. So I haven't treated a lot of psychotic people, but I have treated some psychotic people. But the psychotic people I have treated, I don't think I characterized them as suffering from schizophrenia. It was drug-induced a few times, and also bipolar psychosis. So there's that. Bipolar-related disorders, depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, obsessive-compulsive disorders, trauma, PTSD, of course, dissociative, somatic symptom disorders. It's not really feeding and eating disorders. I specialized for a time in eating disorders. Elimination disorders, no. Sleep-weak disorders, not central. Sexual dysfunctions, a little bit of that. Gender dysphoria, that's not a specialty of mine. There are people that are much better at that, much more qualified with that. I have had clients who were trans. In fact, my very first client 27 years ago was trans. Disruptive, impulsive, substance related, of course. Neurocognitive disorders, personality disorders, absolutely. Paraphilic, somewhat. So but if you asked me a long time ago, no. I've been practicing for 27 years, and I've had a very meandering, eclectic focus. Some therapists really focus on one thing, and I've never been that way for various reasons. Anyway, point is that there are clinicians who don't understand bipolar, which really boggles my mind. So Cole is essentially giving me the impression he's starting to sway me more towards that side. I was just like, oh, is he talking about that? Because there was some indication of that. That's interesting. But, then there's this other side of Zay saying, and the other women are agreeing. Now, are they agreeing because they saw it, or are they agreeing because they are just convinced by Zay's story? And I've seen that before, too. And I'm not saying this is what happened, but there are people who have disorders that cause massive distortions where they believe in these persecutory, delusional, semi-delusional ideas, either based on psychosis, delusion, or based on emotional distortion anyway. And they are so convinced of their story that when they tell their story to people around them, it sounds very believable. And so when you hear these stories from your friend, you're just like, oh my God, Cole is a complete psychopath. He's a horrible, horrible person, because your friend is they're so convinced of their story. And so you as a listener, why would you disbelieve that, right? And so there are examples, and I've treated people on either side of this, where you'll have a Cole, innocent, relatively innocent person who has a whole group of people, maybe even lawyers, maybe even the justice system, the criminal justice system, the law enforcement system, going after Cole or the Cole person, because the distorted person believes what they're saying and is making all these accusations, calling the police, calling their lawyers, calling their friends, calling Cole's friends, and alienating Cole. And it can really destroy someone's life. You might be a victim of that. It's not terribly uncommon for that to happen, where someone's just like making up stories and on a mission to destroy you. So there's not really super direct evidence that Zay would ever do something like that, but I'll just throw that out there as a possibility. There's a lot of other possibilities, by the way. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.